Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat today. I guess we'll just start with some introductions, but we're here to learn more about how the Bookshop Santa Cruz workers came together, started organizing, successfully formed a union at their shop, and what kind of thoughts you might have for other workers who are interested in organizing to improve conditions in their workplace too. So I'll just start. I'm Tim. I'm the campaigns director at coworker.org. And part of what we do is run an online platform where anyone can start a campaign about a workplace issue. And in this case, Eric, who you will soon meet, started a petition to support Celeste and her coworkers who were organizing in Bookshop Santa Cruz. So that's kind of where we enter the picture here. And I'll pass it off to Eric and then Celeste.
Hi, I'm Eric Dernbach. I'm based here in New York City, and I've been a volunteer with this project that started last year called the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, or EWOC. And it was started at the beginning of the pandemic to find ways to help workers that wanted to improve conditions at work, that had problems of all kinds as the pandemic started, whether it was the working conditions they were experiencing in terms of the pandemic issues or other things. And it was through that project that I eventually met Celeste, who was organizing at her workplace. Celeste.
Hi, Celeste. I am based in Santa Cruz, California. I've worked at Bookshop Santa Cruz for almost a year and a half, and we began organizing last May when shelter in place for retail was lifted, and from there got in touch with DSA, got in touch with EWOC, and then just successfully voted in our unionization with CWA Local 9423 on February 3rd.
Great. So Celeste, why don't you walk us through the timeline a little bit? I know you and I was looking back at my notes, you and I started talking end of September, early October, but as you said, you and your coworkers have been organizing for many months. So yeah, just walk us through like what some of the issues were when you started and kind of what you were doing.
Sure, yeah. So in March of 2020, retail in California shut down, shelter-in-place order was instituted, and multiple people at Bookshop voluntarily furloughed. I was one of those people, so we were doing really limited service. It was just curbside and online orders. And then in May, the shelter-in-place order was lifted for retail, so retail was able to operate at limited capacity. And we received a correspondence from management that we either would be coming back to work because they needed an idea of how many people were going to be working in the store. And if we chose not to, it would be a voluntary resignation. And then legally, we no longer would be eligible for unemployment benefits. And we were given 4 days to decide that. And many people felt that that was not enough time to make such a large decision that would impact their health and also the health of their family members and loved ones that they live with. And we also didn't receive correspondence in that interaction of what sort of measurable protections we would be receiving. So we had questions like, is there going to be a greeter? How are we going to institute people who are like fighting back against wearing masks? We all seen videos of people at Walmart like yelling at clerks. We wanted to know, will PPE be provided for us? We had a handful of these kind of questions that, everyone's kind of figuring out as they go along. So that was our first collective action. We drafted an email with a handful of those points that we were concerned about. And we got a response. We got answers to all of those questions, and we were able to, feel comfortable, some of us coming back to work, and then some people didn't come back to work. So that was our first collective action. And then we kind of just kept the ball rolling from there. I realized that organizing is not much more than just talking to your coworkers, finding out what's going on with each other. And we found that we had a lot of concerns in common. And for us in our workplace, it seemed like there was not any other way forward than forming a union. We wouldn't have any other legal protections. I'm sure in some circumstances, if you're just maybe have like one or two issues that you're really concerned about, that it would make sense to just, have a petition or, a mission statement that you present. But for us, unionization was the only way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so we have kind of the full picture, tell us a little bit about the store. It's kind of an important institution in town, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The store's been around for 54 years. It was started by our current owner's father, Neil Coonerty, who's also the mayor of Santa Cruz. And the Coonertys are kind of like a legacy family in Santa Cruz. So it's been around for a long time. It's a really, really important institution. For a while, it was the only bookstore in Santa Cruz for a couple of years. They outlived the Borders down the street. There was a great used bookstore called Logos that's long gone now. And now I'm happy to say that there are a couple other much smaller independent bookstores, but we're still the big one downtown. We have about 31 non-management employees. So, you know, organizing for us was talking to as many of those people as we can. For our purposes, it made sense to go forward with the unionization for 4 departments. So that would be the floor workers, so the people who are interacting with the public on a daily basis and doing online orders, the receiving department, because they have such a physically demanding job, shipping and receiving large parcels, the used book buyers, because they also interface with the public, and then our sidelines department, because they're also on the floor. So that's like our gift department.
Yeah, and I think when you had reached out to EWOC in September, I think at that point, you had basically decided you had already done this collective action, you had already won some things and kind of started down this road, but you wanted to, at that point, you knew that you wanted to, or your group knew that you wanted to have kind of a formal union, right?
Yeah, and most of us don't have experience with unions. Maybe only a handful of us have had union jobs. We do have an alumnus of Green Apple, which is a union bookshop up in San Francisco. So they were able to provide us with some support. And then, you know, just talking to other unionized workplaces like Powell's up in Portland, Oregon, great used bookstore. They have a long history of unionization. They unionized back in the 90s. We also talked with Anchor Brewing, who unionized with ILWU a little while back. So yeah, talking with other folks in the area who were able to share their knowledge and experience with us.
Yeah, and I remember some of the early conversations that we had were about the various ways of kind of doing union organizing, right? In a sense, you had already been doing it, because I think what folks need to realize, and what I think most workers don't realize, is that anytime any group of workers does anything together in the workplace to improve conditions, you are already acting like a union. You don't have official recognition, you don't have a written contract, but you are already doing it. I think a lot of people don't know that. But you wanted to move forward with a more official process, and one of those ways was to hold a union election. And I do remember, I think we were talking about other union bookstores, and we were trying to get copies of their contracts, which we did, right? And then we were trying to find a union for you all to work with. And yeah, we checked around with a few, right? And we eventually connected with Communication Workers of America, CWA, right?
Totally, yeah. So what was really helpful to us was our relationship with the local DSA. A lot of the members of our local DSA are also graduate students, and I'm sure most people who kind of have their ear to the ground on labor actions in the past, 2 years know about the Wildcat strike up at UCSC. So a lot of the folks in DSA are very involved with a lot of local labor actions, and they know a lot of folks, and they're the reason we got in touch with EWOC in the first place. So through there, we were able to make connections with other union folks. We were hopeful to maybe have ILWU for a minute there, because they have such a great reputation, and Anchor Brewing up in SF is affiliated with them. Powell's is affiliated with them, but they don't have a presence in Santa Cruz. And so the great thing about CWA is that, one of their biggest contracts is AT&T. So they're everywhere. So they have a presence in Santa Cruz, and they were really excited to work with us. They're excited about, getting these smaller shops, protected and getting them, part of the union family. And so, yeah, it just seems like a really natural fit. Once we started talking, it kind of just made sense.
Yeah, and it's really great we're able to make that connection. And maybe we'll talk through a little bit about like what kind of led to the filing for a union election and what that process looks like, so folks know. And again, I want to emphasize that folks do not need to do this. What you had already been doing, you were already organizing and winning some things. But organizing a formal union is an option. And so I remember we had a Zoom call with your organizing committee. I think it was at that point you had 4 or 5 folks on your organizing committee. And we recommend at EWOC and others recommend that folks do one-on-one conversations and talk with each other to find out issues, and then form an organizing committee, which are going to be the core activists on a campaign. And I think for a store your size of about 30 or so folks, you had a really great size and committed organizing committee. So what were some of the things that you, basically what did October and November look like as you were you had to get authorization cards signed and and then you filed in December. Walk us through what that looked like.
Oh man, it feels like all such a blur now. It's at the time it seemed like everything was happening really slowly, but in retrospect, it feels like it happened really fast. So, there's kind of this window in between where you're talking to people and you're recognized where you're vulnerable as a worker to retaliation or, unfavorable, kind of union busting stuff going on. That didn't happen in our campaign. I was shocked, nobody spilled the beans. It was crazy. So, we've got a really good group of folks, but yeah, so, we got this great document from EWOC that was an Excel sheet, and it kind of just mapping your workplace. So we had a list of the folks to make sure, our numbers were right. CWA requires you to have 70% support before you go forward with anything public, assuming that a few people will drop off. So we were able to use that as a tool. And that was really instrumental. And then, once we saw that we had the numbers, we wouldn't have gone forward if this wasn't something that the majority of the workplace wanted. We would have found another avenue, but it's something that people felt strongly about. And there have been unionization efforts in the past that didn't happen. So we feel like these issues aren't going away. So yeah, using that mapping tool, we saw we had the numbers. And so next step, was to, ask people. We sent out a couple surveys, like Google Forms, would you sign a union card? Would you wear a t-shirt? Would you wear a button, etc. Just to kind of gauge what people's level of engagement was with this concept of unionization. And so with that support, once we had that 70%, we were mailed the union cards. And so, we got those signed. And then on December 11th, we went ahead and presented our 13-point mission statement to the owner of Bookshop. There were about 6 of us that presented the mission statement, and we're there to, answer some quick questions. And we did ask for voluntary recognition of the 4 departments that I listed before, hoping that we could, that they would be sympathetic to this and that they would be interested in voluntarily recognizing us so we could get to a contract right away. That didn't happen, which, it generally doesn't, is my understanding. So, we filed for an election the next Monday to protect ourselves legally from any, like I said, major union busting or retaliation. And that was a tense couple of days for sure. We talked about it a lot, but we hadn't actually gone through it. And so to experience it was a whole different scenario. But ultimately we had strength in our numbers, and I never for a minute thought that we wouldn't win our election. It was a little tricky because we had filed for those 4 departments specifically, because the NLRB is a national board. It's the appointed people were from the Trump administration. So they had done a lot of actions that kind of had undone labor protections from the Obama era and made it harder for workers. So we had to actually expand our bargaining unit legally. It had to be defined as a wall-to-wall. Generally, the employer will fight to have to keep people out of the bargaining unit because they don't want to give up those workers. But in our case, it actually got expanded. And so we brought all these other people in, and some people were happy about it, some people weren't. And ultimately, we had 31 people in the bargaining unit, 28 people sent in their ballots, and we won our vote 18-10. So that's a 30% difference there. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think you said something that was really important, which is when you filed for the election. Well, okay, so first of all, there's a few options for officially getting a union. One is to get voluntary recognition, which you did ask for. And I want to ask you a minute about literally the meeting that you had where you made that ask. But then the other way is to file officially with the National Labor Relations Board. And folks may be surprised to hear that you only need 30% of workers to sign on cards to file for an election.
Yeah.
But it would be basically union malpractice to file with that few. So I think you had said that CWA likes to see something closer to 70%, like a clear majority. And that's absolutely right. And the reason we do that is that we expect there's going to be union busting activities, and that some of that support is going to get whittled away over time. And that, you know, in the final result, if you end up with slightly less than 50%, you've just lost. So my God, what happens if you start with 30%? Are you going to be able to build support from there, or are you going to lose support? It's really risky, right? So I'm really glad that you started with 70%. But talk to us about that meeting. I remember we talked a few times that week before you made your demand. You put together kind of your platform, which I think is up online, about like what you all wanted. And then what did you say? Like a half a dozen of you like met with your boss in a meeting. What, to the extent that that you're able to talk publicly about it, you know, that's a very tense situation, right? We often talk about and train for what happens when you meet with your boss or march on the boss or make these kinds of demands. So what was that meeting like?
Sure. So, you know, we didn't want to ambush anybody. So we did make an appointment. We said, we would like to chat with you about, you know, workplace conditions. And, you know, it was like 9:30 in the morning. And we have this mission statement that was gleaned from our conversations with our coworkers. So we have 13 points on there. I'll just highlight some of them right now, like just cause, no more at-will employment. That's a pretty standard one in a union contract. You know, dedicated, uninterrupted pay time for section work and professional development, especially like with the holidays that we were going through. It was like, there was no time. We were just getting through orders as fast as we could. We were 10 days behind on web orders. There was no time to like make sure things were even shelved alphabetically. Paid time off for part-time and full-time employees. Improved scheduling procedures. You know, our schedule is a Google Doc. This is one I feel passionately about. I would love to see it brought up to industry standard. You know, we fill out our timesheets with just like a chunk of hours. There's no like, I clocked in at 8:15 and left at 6:30. It's like, just, you know, it all evens out is what I've been told. Big one, limiting the reliance on the Santa Cruz Police Department. That's something you know, a lot of us feel really strongly about. You know, as we know, George Floyd was murdered over the police being called for an allegedly counterfeit $20 bill. And that was in a retail space. You know, we feel like there is a much better alternative for us at Bookshop Santa Cruz than relying on a, you know, inherently racist and classist, you know, judicial system. De-escalation training for all staff. Currently, supervisors are the only ones that receive de-escalation training. Tangible anti-racist procedures and actions. You know, there have been certain circumstances over the past year and a half that have been really unfortunate for some workers at Bookshop. And we feel really strongly that Bookshop, as this liberal institution, needs to recommit itself to anti-racism and not just pat ourselves on the back for having a Black Lives Matter sign in the window. So we have this mission statement. It's pretty boilerplate. It was kind of like, we, the employees of Bookshop Santa Cruz from the following departments, ask for you to recognize us with CWA Local 9423. And so that meeting, we chose, you know, the folks that were in the organizing committee. And we also had one person who's considered a manager who's been really supportive. They came with us. I just read the mission statement, basically. And, you know, there was, you know, understandably like, well, my door is always open. Like, why didn't you bring this to me before? Do you have an example? And we kind of felt like, you know, you're either down or you're not. You know, we kind of got the sense pretty quickly of which way it was going to go. So, you know, there were some follow-up questions. We did ask for an answer by the end of business that day, just so we could decide whether to file or not. Because if we didn't get a response, then we were going to file to protect ourselves. It wasn't like, if you don't answer, then like we're going to leave or walk out or whatever. That was never anything that was discussed. I had someone come up to me like, we were holding a supportive rally just to show public support for bookshop workers. And they're like, are people going to walk out of their shifts tomorrow? It's like, no one ever said anything about a walkout. Like, we're just asking for you to recognize us and like bargain in good faith about these concerns that we have. Like, we're not doing a walkout or a strike or anything. So I think people kind of misunderstand what a union is as well. This is what I keep coming up against, especially in my conversations conversations with reporters is they'll ask like, well, what if Bookshop closes? It's like, why do people think we want to close Bookshop? That's where I work. That's my income. That's my livelihood. Like, why would I want to shut that place down? You know, this isn't because we hate Bookshop and we want to like take it over or whatever. You know, we just want these concerns to be met and we want to reach an agreement on them. So, yeah, definitely tense. I mean, I hope it's okay for me to say this, but like my response after that was like, I got words out and I didn't shit my pants, and that was about as good as I could hope for that interaction. So, yeah.
Yeah, very tense and very tough, and so you did not get voluntary recognition, which happens a lot.
Yeah.
So you did file, and then the public. So at this point, everything was kind of very quiet. It was all on the down low.
Yeah.
You were hoping that like nobody like ran to the boss to tell them it was happening. Then when you filed, or around this time when you notified the boss that this was happening, you went public.
Yeah.
And there's several aspects to that. And I'm going to ask you about one. One is we launched a coworker.org petition, and this is something that we do, as far as I know, with every EWOC campaign, and many other campaigns do this. And we wanted to do this because it gives supporters who are not in town a way to kind of express support. And at this point, we have, last time I checked, we have well over 2,000 signatures. So it shows kind of what the campaign's about. And then we're also able to give updates over time. We've sent out some videos and updates about, you know, the elections happening, and then, hey, we won, et cetera. And so I always enjoy signing those. And I think it's really useful as a show of solidarity so you all can see how much support you have. And also, I'm always hoping that the employer sees it as well, so that they know that this is like being noticed nationally or globally, not just in Santa Cruz, California. So we launched that, and that was great. And it's still up, and we'll keep it up there as long as you're going to negotiate a contract until this is done. But then I wanted to ask you about your local support. You had a rally. I think you've had a few rallies since then. And I know DSA Santa Cruz supported you, and I think you had a lot of support from town because this is a really high-profile campaign, right?
Yeah, I mean, for a workplace of like 40 to 50 people, 2,000 signatures feels incredible, you know, and I was watching it, seeing it go up. And I think
Right.
the big thing for us with the petition is people don't know about it, even in town, you know, they don't know that this is going on. So it's a great way to get the word out. And it also gives people an actionable item. People are always like, how can I help? What can I do to support? I'm like, go sign the petition, share it on Facebook. You know, that's been great. That's been really, really helpful for us in our campaign. And yeah, in terms of the public facing stuff that we've been doing, yeah, DSA has been super instrumental. They printed these great t-shirts for us. We wore them the day that we went public. I got my bandana, we got buttons, you know, and they're just like, they're a total powerhouse. They're a total powerhouse in getting people out. So I really enjoyed the rallies. You know, we are trying to be really conscientious of COVID cases in the area. So all of our like advertising for it, you got to wear a mask, social distancing. So, and for the most part, it's been good. You know, there's a few people like biking by that won't have masks on, but they don't stay for very long. So, yeah, it's been really great. People are really excited to come out. You know, we've got young people, we've got old folks who have been around forever. And, you know, the labor organizing movement, we got people from San Jose, you know, it's been really, really cool to see. And for me personally, it feels really easy, you know, with not going out and like really interacting people while I'm, you know, trying to be responsible with COVID safety, to know that what we're doing isn't in a vacuum. It can feel really insular sometimes, like we're just, you know, talking amongst ourselves, our coworkers, but to really see that support, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, in person, it really lifts our spirits and like reinvigorates us to do what we're doing and keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that, just thinking timeline, so that was mid-December. Yeah. And then your election mail ballot period started beginning of or first week of January and went for 3 weeks to the end of January. So the entire, let's say last half of December, you know, first half of January. So at this point, what we fear and worry about is that there's going to be union busting activities happening where the boss does a bunch of things that's going to instill fear and make people doubt the need to have a union. So, I want to ask you kind of what kinds of things happened and how did you deal with it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we really only had one meeting that was required for us to attend. They closed the store early, which I've never had happen for a staff meeting. Usually overtime is offered for like a handful of people, but they closed the store early, and we all jumped on a Zoom call. And there is this kind of funky dichotomy about like people who work from home and people who are in the store. And so like some of the people who work from home, like we don't get to see them and like talk to them daily. You know what I mean? And so some of them were kind of out of the loop. And then there were people, who we hadn't intended to have in the union because we were trying to organize those 4 departments that I listed. And so our intention was, to have those 4 departments do the bargaining unit. But like I said, when we filed in the NLRB, the unit got expanded because legally we only have one way to file, and then the employer didn't contest that wall-to-wall unit. So some people were pretty unhappy, but people are always going to be unhappy. There's always going to be like those handful of people who are just not stoked. They're anti-union. Someone had a bad experience with a teachers union. We're not a teachers union. It's CWA. We're retail, and there's also, something that's been really cool for us has been to point to other campaigns with CWA. So like Verso just organized with CWA. I just saw this morning that Medium just organized with CWA, which is a great win for them. Super exciting. So, to point to these other places and be like, we have this great union family basically. And the organizing committee also, we were holding a ton of Zoom meetings, trying to get people informed, involved, letting them know what's going on. We brought our reps on the calls. We tried to be as transparent as possible. I want to highlight, we've never done this before. We made mistakes along the way. Looking back, there's certain ways that we would have done things differently, but we ran the best campaign that we knew how to do. I've learned so much, and I'm like so excited. I'm hyped up on organizing, and like I'm stoked to share my experience and knowledge with other folks.
I think I might have told you in December, get ready for a wild ride, Celeste. It's going to be an intense period coming up.
Totally.
Yeah, no, I know. In my background, when I was with a union of grad students, when I was back at Michigan, the times when we were striking and bargaining and doing all of that were intense and memorable and unforgettable and stressful and lots of anxiety, et cetera. But it's interesting about so you had a solid majority of folks that you held the entire time. And I remember we were talking, you had a 3-week mail ballot period. And basically, if all of your yes folks, if all your supporters mailed in their ballot, you were going to win, which is what happened. In fact, you got, I think you said 18 yes folks. Yeah, but I think what you said is right. I mean, there are some folks that are hard to move along. They're either anti-union or they're aligned with management. They might see this as like anti-store or anti-management. I'm always amazed because in a sense, it's like all you're doing is demanding a seat at the table and demanding and getting more power to shape your working conditions. Who wouldn't want that? Who would not want that? So I know you and I talked about how do you deal with these kind of like negative attitude folks and the haters. And I know it was tough. I don't know if you have any insights about how to move people, right?
Some people are never going to be moved, and you just have to make peace with that. I also had an issue with setting a boundary with somebody who was texting me at like 11:30 at night. And I was like, I need to go to bed. And they were like threatening to release this email of like their perspective. And I was like, I can't do this with you. Like, I got to set a boundary. I need to go to bed. I ended up texting them until like 1:30 in the morning, just like talking them off the ledge. You know what I mean? It's just like, I made a commitment to show up for this. And so I'm going to follow it through. But, some folks are never going to be down. And, that's for multiple reasons. Could be they have it really good. They get the free parking space or whatever, or they get, the nice chair. I don't know. It doesn't matter what it is. But I think for us, our solidarity was more important. I've struggled with this a lot, feeling kind of bad about like, hurting people's feelings with the union. But then I'm like, the workplace made a decision to run their business this way. Like no one's forcing anyone to have this kind of like capitalistic hierarchical structure. They could turn it into a worker co-op if they wanted to, but that's a choice that was made to not do that. So what we're really just, what people don't seem to realize for some reason is this kind of structural inequality. I can't fire my boss, but my boss can fire me. Not that they want to, but just like theoretically. And ideologically, I think it's really important that, especially during the pandemic, people are like, oh, it's a bad time to have a union. It's the best time for us to have a union. We need protections more than ever. And if you think now is a bad time, what about when these strains are even stronger and people have to wear 3 masks? We had an incident where we had a sewer pipe burst and people were working next to people in hazmat suits without any personal protective equipment. It's like, is that a good time when the next sewer pipe burst? If you think it's a bad time now, it's never going to be a good time, and I'm not going to change your mind. And I'm just going to stay with my truth, what I know, which is that we deserve protections. We deserve to speak up. People got their heads knocked in for our right to organize, and it's our legal right, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, saying this is not the right time. I mean, is it the wrong time to have more democracy? Is that ever the case? It is sometimes very hard to understand. I think sometimes it's people have their own view about what a union is, and it's a negative one. And sometimes they're just like, they might just be happy with hierarchy and authority. And it's, maybe they just want to show up to work and get told what to do. And like, oh, no, I don't want more power. I don't need a seat at the table. I don't care if you listen to my input. It doesn't make any sense to us. But I think when we're organizing, we do have to kind of think about what people are thinking and where are they at. And I know you tried your best with these folks, right?
I think bookshops fundamentally have this kind of, they attract a certain type of worker. They attract people who are thinking critically, people who are passionate about books, and ideas. And, for some people, maybe it is just a job. But for us, like, this is my life. Like, I might not work at a bookshop forever, but like, this is part of, I've seen the light, and like, I can't go back at this point. I can't. So I think, what you were saying about some people who don't like unions or they like authority, I think most people's experiences are probably with teachers unions. They're kind of the point that most people find accessible. And I've been seeing a lot of like anti-teacher union stuff on Instagram and Facebook, and it's like really shocking to me. So yeah, we had one person who had a really bad experience with their teachers union, and they thought that Bookshop was going to have to pay for our lawyers' fees, because I guess something like the district has to pay. It's like, no, that's what our dues are for. So there's this kind of fundamental misunderstanding of what a union is. There were comments on Facebook like, oh, those people striking in front of the store are going to be so pissed a year from now when the store is gone. It's like, there's no strike. You guys, they just don't know that a union does not equal strike, so there's this fundamental misunderstanding of what it is. And I think that's because of the kind of the decline of unions. Europe has way more union strength than we do. And like, we need to build that back up, because the more information there is about it, the more people realize like, hey, actually, I do have power as a worker and my labor has value. And I can ask to be protected while I'm doing this labor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the union is just the workers. That's it. It's just the workers themselves. And folks have to realize that it is not some third party that's going to come in and tell you what to do. Right?
No.
Related, Celeste, to what you were just saying about like, the light was turned on for you and now there's no going back. I'm wondering, and it was cool the way you started talking about how folks locally were really aware of and involved with the grad worker strike, and how like, people are just inspiring each other through these different workplace fights. I'm wondering like, and you're still very much in it now, but you've learned a lot along the way so far. I'm curious, like, what are some of the most important things that you would advise to other workers in other workplaces who are thinking about this, and maybe particularly in the bookshop industry as well? You might want to
Yeah, we are seeing a lot of organizing in like the publishing and bookshop world, and super cool to see. A lot of us have kind of the same concerns, but I just want to highlight again, organizing is just talking to your coworkers. We got to know each other really, really well. I found out who has an 84-year-old grandmother at home who's worried about bringing COVID back to them. I found out who had COVID, so you just get to know each other really well. And, it's good to also to find people who play off of your weaknesses. So for example, within our organizing committee, I'm really good at talking to people. What I'm not good at is like setting up meetings and scheduling and like Zoom calls and stuff. So we have someone who's really good at that sort of stuff, and like the theory of it. And I'm good at practically like going and chatting. So it's good to have people who like, whatever your weakness is, they have a strength there. And that kind of happened naturally for us, but you could also be strategic about it. You're like, I want Billy because he's a really good writer and I want him to write op-eds. You know, that's the other thing that's an advantage to the bookstores. A lot of people are writers. A lot of people are really good writers. So we got a lot of great content. We made a little zine as well that has like poetry from one of our alumni. I wrote a piece, another person wrote a piece. We have art. So yeah, anyone, like whatever the skill that you have is, like, utilize it. You have a person who's a printmaker, have them make prints. You have a person whose aunt has a food truck who wants to donate her food, like bring it to the rally, you know, whatever it is, like utilize what strengths are already there and make it happen. And yeah, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. I work at Bookshop. I also go to school, and my boyfriend can tell you, he was like, I feel like all you do is Zoom calls. And you know what? It's fine. Cause that's what I want to be doing, is I want to be here having the Zoom calls with you folks. But it's like another job. It's another full-time job.
I hear that. Absolutely. And so what's next in the process? I mean, you got officially certified. You have an official union. Contract negotiations. What happens now?
Yeah, freshman contract. So we're going to be sending out a survey to everyone in the bargaining unit, probably based on those 13 points on our mission statement. So I've heard from some people, they're like, now that I cited the mission statement, but now that I thought about it, like this one thing doesn't seem as important as this other thing. So we're going to be finding out from folks, like, what is the issue that you're most concerned about? How do you think that we can solve this issue? What's the best thing for us? You know, some of these things during a pandemic might not be financially sustainable for the store. That's fine. We'll make provisions in our contract. It's going to be totally negotiable. We're not going to take a contract from another store and just plop it onto ours. We're going to create something that's going to work for us during this time where it's like profits are super down and it's really hard to survive. So, you know, we're not trying to close the store. In fact, we're trying to, you know, we wouldn't unionize if we didn't want the store to stay open and continue to have it be a great place for people to work who come in the future. So, so freshman contract, and I'm sure to be in the room. I'm not sure who else is going to want to join me there, but we'll find out with that survey who wants to jump in. And yeah, I'm excited. I think we're going to reach a conclusion pretty quickly. I think that there's a lot of things that we can agree on in there. And I think that Bookshop has some policies already in place that we can build off of. So we're definitely not starting from scratch.
That's good.
That's really great. Yeah, I mean, I love it when lots of folks are involved in negotiations, so they can kind of see it for themselves. And it can be a real treat too, sitting across from the boss as an equal in these negotiations. And I noticed in all the things that you said about the demands, I mean, a lot of them aren't even really about money. Like, obviously you have wage and benefit concerns, but a lot of the other things aren't going to cost a lot of money. This isn't always about money. It's about communication, transparency, respect, and other things, which I think you've described. Yeah.
Yeah. Another big one for us too is at Bookshop, you know, most people work like one or two different positions, and there's historically been an issue with people being underpaid for certain positions. So I think if we can kind of streamline this goes hand in hand with scheduling. If we can kind of streamline, I think it's one of those things where it's like, it's kind of just the way it's always been done, but it's like, it's 2021, baby. It's a pandemic. Like, let's streamline some stuff. Let's make it, let's make your job easier. Let's make payroll easier for you. It doesn't have to be so tricky. So like, let's work together. Let's figure something out. I'm really excited. I've never done anything like this before. I've never followed through on anything like this before. I'm a great procrastinator. So this has been like a really cool experience for me to show up for myself and my coworkers. Yeah.
I would not characterize you as a procrastinator, Celeste. You're such a driving force of this whole thing. No, it's great. It's again, so great. And I was so glad to be able to help out a bit and just watch it unfold. Yeah. Tim, any other questions we have? What do you think?
Well, I mean, that has been so helpful. And I think it's exciting to hear what's next. So I guess my last question is, Celeste, if people or hearing your story, they want to get in touch and they want to follow the work that you're doing with your coworkers, how can they find you?
Yeah. So we're at Instagram at BSC Workers. Also, Twitter, I believe, is also BSC Workers. You can also shoot us an email if you're trying to organize your workplace, especially if you're in the California area. We're already talking with a few workplaces, not necessarily about unionizing, but kind of just what we did, how it works, and just sharing our experience. Yes, you can also email us at union.bookshopsc@gmail.com. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And yeah, the Zoom calls are not ending anytime soon.
Yeah, and I think you could find the coworker petition on the link is on Instagram and on Twitter. Also, If you go to coworker, I think if you just search for Bookshop Santa Cruz, you'll find it.
Yep.
We're keeping it up there. It's up there until you're done with the contract.
Yeah.
And so absolutely, let's keep folks signing up for that. Yep.
And thank you. I mean, Celeste, as you said, you're working many jobs, doing lots of Zooms. So very grateful that you took the time to share your experience on this one as well.
Of course.
And as you said, I'm just really thankful to the work that you and your coworkers are doing because, you said already people are reaching out to you to learn more about what you did, and like the ripple effects of what you're doing in your own workplace are going to just keep continuing. So a lot of people are going to have benefits and, be inspired throughout the course of your campaign as well. So it means so much more than just you and your coworkers too.
Yeah, we hope so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. All right.